Germany under Hitler. Who were the people who voted for him in 1933? Who trusted him? Who despised him? Who feared for their lives? What did they think when war broke out in 1939? And what did they still believe in by the time it ended in 1945? 8 diaries tell of life under National Socialism, be it fanatical support for an inhuman ideology or fear of persecution and extermination. A witness to the thinking of the time, these 8 German accounts depict everyday life, allegiance, coming of age, inner turmoil, despair, and death.
Rudy's estate has arrived. His diary, his empty wallet, photographs, a rosary.
The war defined life in Germany. This was true even for those far from the front, like Matthias Mees and his family in Wittlich in the Eifel. His brother-in-law, Rudolf Ahrens, Rudi, was killed in action. He was only 34 years old. The pride and hope of his family, according to the obituary.
It is inconceivable that such a good, kind, and cheerful man had to lose his life in such a war, and in such lonely circumstances. He experienced unspeakable hunger, hardship, and horror, and died during his first combat mission. Now he rests in Russia's vast countryside.
At 48, innkeeper Matthias Mees was too old to be called up. But he worried about his other brother-in-law, Christian, Rudi's younger brother.
January 18th, 1942. The event of the day. Christian left Russia on leave. He was on the foremost front lines for 8 days, with torn boots. His eyes tell more than all the army reports. He came here to the military hospital, cold through and through, ulcers on his legs that won't heal, and a heart condition, so he can't go back into the field.
In Hamburg, the air raid alarms sounded repeatedly, harbingers of Allied airplanes and their bombs. Luise Solmitz and her family had been lucky so far. They hadn't been injured in the raids.
An alarm again. Sirens wail in the distance. What a life this is for us. And it will go on like this, forever and ever. The floor trembles beneath us. The radio plays happily.
The constant attacks wore on people's already frayed nerves. Food rations were restricted even further.
Reduced allotment of bread, meat, fat, where there was already not enough to go around. The rosy-cheeked, well-fed sausage dealer said, 50 animals that I was supposed to get are gone. And by the way, I've been called up. A deep silence suddenly descended. Somehow, a feeling of fate being close at hand. We snagged a quarter pound of chocolates. Unfortunately, we ate them that night as soon as the alarm went off.
Helmut Fischer had been a soldier since the end of August 1939, stationed in Poland, Belgium, and then France. He was promoted to Director of War Administration at the beginning of March, deployed to an area behind the front. He was given special leave to see his family in Bremen before deploying to the Eastern Front in mid-April 1942.
As hard as it is to say goodbye to Gerda and the children with whom I've spent 5 weeks, I'm happy to see my wish to get out again fulfilled. It's just a shame that I can't go all the way to the front.
Fischer was to take command of an army vehicle fleet in Baranovice, around 150 kilometers southwest of Minsk, starting in mid-April. The German occupiers had set up a ghetto for over 10,000 Jews in the city.
April 18th, 1942. We landed this afternoon on the second beautiful spring day. There is a lot to do, as there are also numerous civilian employees and workers, Russians and Jews, to look after. April 22nd, 1942. Mass also told me yesterday about the execution of the Jews. They were gathered in the ghetto, loaded onto trucks, and driven to caves. There the people, including many women and children, were shot one after the other by about 10 snipers. Some small children were thrown into the air and shot, kind of like skeet shooting. 2 Jews have been sawing wood in the barn for the last 7 months. They ask me from time to time whether they will be shot next.
Because German men were at the front, so-called Eastern workers were deported from the occupied territories of the Soviet Union and Poland to Germany to perform forced labor.
Encountered a scene of horror this morning at the employment office. Around 50 to 60 Poles had been brought in, people who could be chosen as workers. Completely ragged, torn, starving, like at a Roman slave market, completely at the mercy of the master race.
The father and mother-in-law of Matthias Mees were vintners and lived nearby on the Mosel River. Their sons Rudi and Christian used to work at the winery. Now Rudi had been killed, and Christian was at war.
I was also asked to choose some for my in-laws. We decided on 2 children, aged 14. Twins who were all alone, didn't understand a word of German, and had 2 photographs of their parents with them as part of their meager belongings. Who doesn't feel the suffering of these people? Who doesn't think that this will come back to haunt us? That will face revenge? Woe to us if we lose the war.
Baranovice, summer 1942. Helmut Fischer received news from home.
Britische Bomber griffen in der Nacht wieder die Stadt Bremen und ihre Vororte vorwiegend mit Brandbomben an. Die Zivilbevölkerung.
I was very worried about you after the radio reports about the air raid on Bremen. Just keep your heads up. This war must be brought to a decent end. Were this not possible, we'd be in a similar situation to the Jews in this country.
And that situation was dire. Helmut Fischer kept hearing about German forces carrying out mass shootings in occupied Soviet territories.
July 18th, 1942. I heard that about 1,300 Jews had been shot the day before. They, men, women and children, had been driven to a pit where they were shot in the head. Our foreman Hagen, an eyewitness, told me that only the children put up a fuss. Clothes and laundry will be disinfected and reused.
Freddy Solmitz, Luisa's husband, was a Christian, but because of his heritage, the Nazi regime considered him to be a Jew, protected only by his marriage to a non-Jewish wife. Authorities had deported Jews from Hamburg by the thousands since the autumn of the previous year. For the Solmitz family, the fear of deportation was a constant companion.
Jews had to go to Warsaw again. I found garbage cans overflowing with colorful tin cans, old bedside lamps, tattered handbags. Children were jubilantly rummaging through them. Old Mrs. Wolf said that the children had accompanied her departure with loud cheers.
Luisa Solmitz was also worried about her daughter. Gisela was now 22 years old and, according to Nazi race laws, considered a first-degree half-breed, forbidden to be in relationships with nationals of German blood. Gisela had met a young man, Lucien Vitou. He was Belgian, which meant Nazi racial laws did not apply to him. He worked as a machinist in Hamburg and was a frequent visitor to the Solmitz home.
Lucien gave me 2 eggs for Gisela, and Gisela got him 100 grams of sausage. It was too cute. Gisela told me that she and Lucien want to get married, that they wanted to ask about the possibility. Freddy promptly sent a letter to the registry office. I couldn't fall asleep. That letter lying there in the red mailbox upset me. What if we receive a rejection notice?
Egon Ölwein, a manager in the Reich labor service, was stationed some 250 kilometers northwest of Moscow. The Battle of Richev lasted for months, killing hundreds of thousands of soldiers. While there, Ölwein received a message from his wife Marta.
Yesterday, I received Marta's letter informing me that she's expecting our 3rd child. I'm happy. More because of my overall worldview and sense of kinship, rather than the joy of having children in general.
Ölwein's unit built barracks and fortifications, secured supplies, and repaired bridges just behind the front line. For the first time, he found himself in the thick of battle. He wrote of a baptism by fire and a hail of bullets. His diary entries capture both his fascination and horror.
A direct hit is reported in the tent camp. I help with rescue efforts. No doctor, no vehicles, no dressing station. Legs torn off, lungs shredded. We were attacked 4 times in one day by airplanes using onboard weapons and dropping shrapnel bombs. Enemy tanks are 10 kilometers away. We begin a wild retreat through swampy terrain. A torrential thunderstorm breaks out. We can only see where we're going by flashes of lightning. We reach our destination after tediously wading through knee-deep mud. Wrapped in blankets, we fall asleep in a corner.
August 20th. Ortrun Körber had been living in Germany again, in Würzburg, for over 3 years. She was about to turn 18. One more year of school, then she planned to study music. During summer vacation, she went to the countryside with her family.
Right now, I'm lying in a meadow doing nothing. I've brought a lot of books with me, and of course, my diary. There's a man here who spent several years in a concentration camp. He looks very old, but he's only 50. When he washed himself at the well once, we saw that his back was full of welts and scars. We heard that he was beaten in a concentration camp. Mom tried to get something out of him, but he didn't say a word.
Inge Thiele, the gardener from Arnsberg in the Sauerland region, started writing in her diary again after more than a year. She entered the number of soldiers killed in Russia, more than 270,000 according to the radio. The actual number was many times higher. On the radio, Inge Thiele also heard the name of a childhood friend, a pilot.
It was announced on the radio today that Franz Schulte was awarded the Knight's Cross for shooting down 46 aircraft. Unfortunately, he has been missing in action in Russia since August 12th. His family clings to the hope that he will come back. Perhaps he's been taken captive.
Immer tiefer stoßen die Panzerkeile in den Feind hinein, Stalingrad entgegen, das Stalin selbst als Herz Russlands bezeichnet hat. Es geht die Entscheidung.
Every single house is a fortress, and each must be fought for individually. The city will become a mass grave for friend and foe. When we hear the special announcement that we're in complete control, we'll all breathe a sigh of relief.
Helmut Fischer was transferred even further east. He was now stationed near Rostov-on-Don, more than 2,000 kilometers away from his family.
November 8th, 1942. At night, I always look up to the North Star, then half left to the northwest and think to myself, that's where Bremen is. They see the same stars there that I do. Last night, when I saw a shooting star, I wished for the end of the war and to return home. Perhaps it worked.
The Wehrmacht report brings bad news. Stalingrad surrounded. Heavy fighting everywhere. The mood is lousy, but you can't despair just yet. Our maid here in the garden center hasn't received any mail from her husband for 9 weeks. He's likely among those surrounded. The weight is unbearable.
On February 2nd, 1943, German troops fighting in Stalingrad surrendered to the Soviets. The battle had killed more than 1 million people, Soviets and Germans, civilians and soldiers. German authorities issued slogans to persevere and called for total war.
February 18th, 1943. This evening, Dr. Goebbels gave a speech in the Sportpalast. By asking 10 rhetorical questions, he received complete confirmation for the course of action he and the government desired. Later, one won't be able to grasp how, at such a grave hour, a representative of the government could employ such ridiculous tricks, and how the people could accept such things with lamb-like patience. Tonight, the Dresden String Quartet played Haydn's Lark Quartet.
April 17th, 1943. I am celebrating my 1-year anniversary in Russia. I will curse this country 3 times on this day. The crumbling houses, the mountains of rubble, the grey, treeless landscape. I have only one wish. Good riddance.
By a stroke of luck, Helmut Fischer's wish came true. 2 weeks later, the 42-year-old was transferred from Russia to the occupied Netherlands, far away from the Eastern Front. He saw his arrival in Amsterdam as a cause for celebration.
A bender that lasted until 6 a.m. June 21st. My first walk in Amsterdam took me to various churches, and though it's forbidden, through the Jewish quarter. The city seems pleasant enough, but it's almost deserted. Yesterday, a number of Jews were taken away again.
Luisa and Freddie Zolmitz rarely went into the bunker during air raid warnings, opting to put out fires in their house themselves if the worst were to happen. On July 23rd, the Allies announced particularly heavy attacks, dropping leaflets warning the people of Hamburg.
The city would be spared for the night, but then they would come to finish it off. Nobody wants to go to bed. Everyone stays dressed.
Operation Gomorrah. For 10 days and nights, thousands of Allied bombers flew air raids on Hamburg, killing more than 35,000 people and destroying hundreds of thousands of homes. Around 900,000 Hamburg residents were left homeless. The Zolmitz family was spared once again.
August 4th, 1943. Took the time at home to sit down and write. I ate my marzipan, which the people of Hamburg had received as a small compensation. Sadly, reality eclipsed the rumors of hundreds and thousands of people dying in blazing cellars and bunkers. What is to become of us? Of Germany?
Residents of Wittlich also had to endure near-daily air raid alarms. Allied bombers flew over the town on their way to their targets in Germany's interior. The sirens wailed their warnings, then the all clear, over and over again. Even so, the town decided to hold a late summer fair.
The fairground is full to the brim with people thirsty for adventure. It's almost impossible to get a place on the merry-go-round with your children. No sign of the seriousness of the war. The heaviest of defensive battles are raging in the east. Every day there are obituaries for the fallen in the newspaper. Every retreat is chalked up as a defensive success. Despite the Russian advance, it is said that we have the initiative.
Das Oberkommando der Wehrmacht geht bekannt. An der Ostfront verlief der Tag ruhig. Nur an einzelnen Abschnitten kam es zu geringer örtlicher Kampftätigkeit.
January 14th, 1944. Little Margaret had a big day today, a farewell party for her class in our house. Many boys in the class, aged 15 and 16, are being drafted into military service as part of the Air Force Auxiliary. Will they come back?
Officials had told the Solmitz family they wouldn't process the marriage application for Gisela and her boyfriend, the Belgian foreign worker Lucien Vitou, until after the war. Still, the young couple was happy. Gisela was pregnant. Not a word of this appeared in Louise's diary.
January 23rd, 1944. Saw the very nice movie Operetta at the Capitol. From the world of Viennese operetta, I stepped into the ruins. A wagon with probably 100 raw, white pine coffins drove past, nested, one inside the other, a sign of the times.
Ortrun Körber had finished school in Würzburg. Before she could study, she was required to do mandatory national labor service, which began in May of 1944.
I found out that I was supposed to work in a factory. I'm angry, so angry. Now I have to make grenades for their war. I have to make grenades for the Nazis. I grease screws with thick brown oil and wrap the grenades in brown paper. When I get home, I scrub my hands with soap and hot water for half an hour, but they don't get really clean, and my fingernails stay completely black.
After the German occupation of Italy, hundreds of thousands of Italian soldiers were brought to Germany to perform forced labor. Some were brought to the factory where Ortrun Körber worked.
I must write about Carlo. I saw him for the first time when I came into the dark factory hall. A tall man with a narrow, pale face and black hair. Occasionally, he looked at me and smiled.
Louise Solmitz had become a grandmother. Richard was born during a bombing raid on May 8, 1944.
What a comfort the innocence, the sweetness of my grandson is to me these days. When things get too bitter, all I have to do is turn my thoughts to the beloved child, and everything becomes peaceful and quiet.
1 month later, on June 6, 1944, the Allies landed on the beaches of Normandy, the beginning of their Great Western Offensive. It meant that, for the time being, no bombers were seen in the skies above Hamburg.
June 10th, 1944. Richard's baptism. The invasion had the advantage for us that the English and Americans had no time for us, and we were happier than we had been in a long time. Thursday, July 20th, 1944. At 6 p.m. I was drying off Richard after his bath and heard something in the air. I was surprised to find it was the Leonora Overture, which is only played on ceremonial occasions. We bring you this important announcement, an attempted assassination of the Führer, who sustained only minor burns and bruises.
The attempt to assassinate Adolf Hitler with a bomb at his headquarters had failed. The conspirators were arrested and charged in droves.
This morning's newspapers carry pages of reports on the 2-day trial before the People's Court. All are sentenced to death and hanged 2 hours later.
The Gestapo now began targeting more and more people and initiated a wave of arrests across the country. Matthias Mees and 4 other Democrats, former politicians of the Catholic Center Party from Wittlich, were among those detained.
August 23rd. At the behest of a higher authority, we are to be brought before the state police in Trier today. We will travel there under police protection and await what is to come.
Authorities interrogated Mace. He didn't write in his diary about the exact reasons for his arrest. In the end, the investigation came to nothing and Mace was released. At this point, his diary broke off. Back in Würzburg, authorities had forbidden Germans to have any contact with foreign workers, including those from Italy. But Otrun Körber did not comply, striking up conversations with Carlo and giving him food.
When I arrived at the factory on Monday, I noticed that everyone looked away when I entered the hall. Someone had seen Carlo go to our house. The next few days were almost unbearable. The women spit when they saw me.
Rumors were dangerous. Everywhere in the Reich, German women accused of having an affair with a foreign worker were subjected to public humiliation. It was considered a betrayal of the national community.
September 11th, 1944. Our house is under surveillance by the Gestapo. We live in fear. What did the Gestapo find out about us? Is it something we said? Is it because of Carlo? We're afraid of being searched. If they find my diaries, we're all doomed. We finally found a solution. A friend has a garden with a small shed. This afternoon, Mom took the books there, put them in her shopping bag, and covered them with vegetables. Now I write in a little notebook that I keep in the kitchen. If the Gestapo come, I'll burn it in the kitchen oven.
Gardener Inge Thiele rarely wrote in her diary anymore, but she did write about Fritz. She had finally found a husband. Fritz Meyer was a leader in the Hitler Youth. She lived with him in Unna, Westphalia.
I've been happily married to Fritz for 2 months. We have now entered the 6th year of the war. The enemy is on our borders. Our big cities are destroyed. The only thing that can save us now is the strong internal front, which has been reawakened and strengthened after the attack on the Führer on July 20th. Fritz is always waiting to be called up. I'm happy for every day he's still with me, but when he is called up, I have to be brave. If I was expecting a child, I'd be happy.
Egon Oelwein's career with the Reich Labor Service had stalled. He wanted to get away from his desk, go to the front, and fight for Germany.
I handed in my application to join the Waffen-SS. I've been examined by an SS commission and was found to be fit.
Before Egon Oelwein began his service with the Waffen-SS, he wrote in the family journal, addressing his children.
I want to be able to look you straight in the eye when you ask me later, "Where were you in the war, Father?" And I want you to be proud, no matter what happens to me. By 1946, I expect to be able to stand firmly and permanently in your midst again.
When I get Richard ready for the bunker, he, in his sweet innocence, sees it as a fun game. I listen anxiously for the approach of large squadrons of enemy airplanes. Every time the heavy doors close, I'm reminded of times gone by. Going to a theater, an expectant crowd. The doors are closed. The curtain is about to rise. Human destiny will unravel before us.
January 27th, 1945. I'm now expecting a child, which I'm looking forward to immensely. But I'm also worried about it. What will it be like when the baby comes? Will the terror of bombing still be there? Or will I be able to wait for the birth in peace?
In February 1945, American forces began to occupy Germany's western Rhine region. In the east, Soviet troops had advanced as far as the Oder River, 80 kilometers from Berlin.
The Russians are on the advance. Will we be able to stop them? And then what? Oh, there is no answer to any question, but you can sense that it is a matter of being or not being. I think of the many people in the East who must leave their homes and farms and flee to the Reich as quickly as possible with the bare necessities. And with the severe cold now, It will be dramatic.
Martha Oelwein was fleeing Upper Silesia, traveling hundreds of kilometers with her 3 children, Volkart, Rainer, and Hiltrud.
What happened was inhumane. Most people never got out. We can only be thankful that I didn't freeze to death with the 3 children, to be removed from the cattle wagon as corpses, as happened in many cases. Now we've lost everything. Tomorrow Hiltrud will be 2 years old, in such terrible surroundings.
February 14th, 1945. My darling, your letter arrived yesterday, full of worry and gloomy descriptions. Don't let any naysaying weaken and shake your confidence. It's difficult, of course, when you're left with only the clothes you're wearing. You'll probably receive this letter around our wedding anniversary. I think that by the time it comes around again, everything we've gone through will seem like a bad dream.
At the beginning of March, Egon Oelwein's unit was deployed to Hungary and tasked with supporting the 5th SS Panzer Division, known as the Viking Unit. He wrote one last letter to Martha, one last sign of life.
March 15th, 1945. The Russians are about 2 kilometers away. Today, I'm supposed to move forward to the observation post. Despite the risk involved, I'm happy about it, because it puts me right in the middle of the action. More soon. Best wishes. And cheer up. I can feel it. Nothing serious is going to happen to me.
Otrun Körber's father had drafted into the Volkssturm, the militia comprising teenagers and middle-aged men. She, her mother, and sisters were now on their own. Because of the bombing raids, they fled the city to a friend's cabin, taking Carlo with them.
We hope that no bombs fall here. Today, we've almost forgotten about the war. There hasn't been a single alarm in 2 days. It's as if we're having a picnic.
She wrote those words in the afternoon of March 16, 1945. That evening, 236 British bombers approached Würzburg.
Suddenly, our cabin was flooded with an eerie yellow light coming from outside. Bombs were falling and exploding close by. Mom shouted, "Run to the ditch behind the tree!" The tree is only a few meters from the cabin, but never did it seem so far away to me as it did at that moment. Carlo pushed us to the ground. I lay very close to him, and while the whole world seemed to explode around us, he kissed me goodbye. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was all over.
The attack lasted 20 minutes, destroyed 90% of Würzburg's city center, and killed thousands. Rubble and ashes were everywhere. U.S. troops crossed the Rhine and advanced further into the Ruhr area. They were approaching Unna, where Inga Thiele lived with her husband Fritz.
The war is coming for us. What is in store for us? The atmosphere is tense to bursting. Everything seems to be disintegrating. Newspapers and radio are still so hopeful, preaching perseverance. Fritz joined the Volkssturm. It's so eerily quiet without him. Sometimes I'm terrified that I could soon lose him. He's so looking forward to our child.
For Matthias Mees, the war was already over. The Americans were in Wittlich. At the beginning of April, he began writing in his diary again.
I'll once again pick up the threads in my diary. Threads that broke off in August last year. A lot has happened since then. The last defenders of Adolf Hitler's terrible ideas, starved, tired, and beaten, took their leave. One can hope for good.
Helmut Fischer was still in the occupied Netherlands. In previous weeks and months, he had written very little in his diary.
April 15th, 1945. The mood among the troops is gloomy. Nobody wants to be shot to death 5 minutes before the end of the war. Nazi propaganda lacks any basis in fact, and is therefore ineffective. What is the point of this resistance, which defies all reason?
April 20th. The Allies have made a terrible discovery. They have conquered 2 concentration camps with tens of thousands of prisoners. It was the most horrible thing imaginable. On Adolf Hitler's birthday. Where might Hitler be? Will he allow himself to be captured? Will he flee? Will he shoot himself?
May 1st. Freddy fiddles with the radio. Heroic death of the Führer. May 8th, 1945. Richard is 1 year old. The bunker child. How incredibly beautiful that we can celebrate Richard's first birthday in peace.
The war had ended. Germany had capitulated. After a little more than 12 years and 3 months, Hitler's Reich was finished. And life must go on.
Carlo is on his way to Italy. It was so strange and sad to lose him. I go to the window and look out at the ruins of Würzburg. Tears well up in my eyes. I don't know whether they're from sadness or gratitude.
We are no longer masters. The English and Americans are here. And the Russians are in the east, on our land. This is the end of the Third Reich that we believed in. Fritz has been in American custody since May 5th. The food and treatment are very good. Anyone who hasn't done anything notable will have nothing to fear from the Americans. Maybe things will turn out better than we think.
Inge Thiele's child was born in the summer of 1945. Her husband was released from the internment camp 2 years later. Luise Solmitz returned to professional life and worked as a teacher again. Gisela and Lucien Vitou got married. Matthias Mees became mayor of Wittlich and later a member of the First Bundestag, West Germany's new parliament. After a short period as a prisoner of war, Helmut Fischer returned to Bremen and his work as a teacher. Egon Oewein has been listed as missing in action since March of 1945. Otrun Körber began studying music after the war. She would never see Carlo again.